Um, where are you in the world?
Caribé,
Okay,
home of Bon Scott and J.M. Barrie.
okay. Is that your? Have you been there for a while?
Yeah. We've been up here for about sort of 4 years now, and we're to and fro between here and Edinburgh. So it's but yeah, since I've more or less retired, I'm mostly here these days. Yeah.
And what have you retired from? Poetry, music, other things?
Just withdrawn from life in general. No, I gave up my post at St Andrews. I was professor of poetry there for many years, so I demitted that job, and I was working in publishing. So I thought I'd go back to doing, what I was doing when I was 20. Which is just writing books and playing my guitar, and
It's a very. I don't know any. Do you know anybody else that's combined being a serious poet and a serious jazz musician?
That's a good question. There was a couple of guys that played well. There was a guy called Roy Fisher, a Birmingham poet, who was a decent player.
What did he play?
He was a pianist,
Right.
and the late Thomas Tranströmer, I think he got the Nobel. He was a Swedish poet. He was a really handy pianist.
Right.
Tranströmer, nice jazzer in the Scandal fashion he played. So it was,
Okay.
but it's not a common. It's just a tug of the fruit machine. It could have been like sort of origami and parquet flooring. It's just like it's.
I mean, normally people have the sort of one artistic pursuit that's unlikely to make any money, and they pair it with a banker that's going to be a steady earner. But most people, you seem to have combined two things that, and actually been really successful at both, which is pretty amazing.
But it's true that sort of neither of them. I mean, jazz is about the only thing where the money's worse than poetry. I got into the aphorism gig, just for the money, like yeah. No, so I mean, I've done jobs as well, so that's been the main reason. But yeah, none of us are in this gig for the money. I think, Tom. I don't think that's the.
Well, I'm not. No, it's a bit of a shock to. It'll be a bit of a shock to my wife. In fact, I married my wife. I was a doctor, and I sort of became a jazz drummer to her. Well, she was expecting it, I guess, but.
It wasn't a total surprise to her. No, that would have been. I'm marrying a doctor. Oh, right. Jeez.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, you played Playtime. I think one time before, a couple of years ago, and I wasn't there. And I'm not going to be there for this one either. The next one you're doing.
Well, I'm starting to take this personally, Tom. So
I know. Well. It's kind of like the forces of the universe are conspiring. But I'm trying to remember. I think the first time I met. Well, I don't know how much we spoke, but I remember seeing you play with Lamas.
Yeah.
In the Tron Tavern basement in Edinburgh. That must be quite a long time ago. That was a fantastic.
In the 90s, yeah.
And that was when I first became aware of you as a player. And maybe we'll come back to talk about that in a bit, about the mixture between jazz and traditional music. But I'm really interested. I'm going to ask most people on this how they got into jazz and what was their route into it.
My dad was a musician, and so that was the route into music. So he played country and western music mostly, semi-professionally, and Scottish music. And I used to go out and play with him. But initially, I was into. He was a guitar player. He played bluegrass mostly. Yeah. Nice guitar player. So he never taught me, but he left nice instruments lying about the house, which was great, And then I did the usual thing, listen to Steve Hillage and a lot of fusion stuff. That would have been in the late 70s, God help us all. And then, it was the South Bank show. I heard John McLaughlin on the South Bank show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Melvin. That was your license fee was worth something back then. It was like,
Melvin. He was he had amazing hair.
Beautiful hair back there.
Yeah,
leonine. So I saw him, and I remember I think I saw Alan Holdsworth in Sight and Sound in Concert in the BBC in the same week, and it's like, that's better. Let's do that, like, you know.
Right. Okay.
But it was also just, Big Rob Adams used to run a record shop at the bottom of Commercial Street in Dundee. So you'd go in looking for Steve Hillage, but he'd be playing Charlie Mingus or something, and you think, that's kind of better too, you know. So Rob was the education.
Well, I mean, yeah, Rab's. I mean, I'm actually. I'm planning to get Rab onto this and interview him because he does a lot. He's still doing a lot for Scottish jazz, and but that's very interesting because that record shop. I have a 26-year-old son, and I try and explain to him how difficult it used to be to find music, and especially kind of niche music or underground music or minority music. And the record shop was this place where you would go and you just, what's that? Now you can have almost the entire music in the whole world in your phone.
Yeah, I mean, I've had these parallel conversations with my 24-year-olds, and they can't really believe what it was like. You know, it was and that was the great thing about having Rab there, was he would stop you because you only had money for like one album a month, you know.
Yeah.
And I think he stopped me buying, sort of all these terrible prog albums and said, I think you'll prefer Robert Wyatt's, you know.
Did he just kind of go, no, I'm not selling you
that? Yeah, you don't want to listen to that. Buy this. And he was always right, you know. It's great.
I'm having that with my mechanic at the moment. He's refusing to MOT my car. Your car is too shit to MOT. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do it.
Right.
And were you playing guitar already when you heard these people on, we saw McLaughlin, and were you already playing guitar? Or was it like, oh, I want to play that?
Yeah, but I was more into kind of John Martin singer-songwriter stuff, you know, because my dad used to run the folk club in Dundee. So he used to bring me along when I was like nothing, you know, and I'd sit in the pram at the back, you know, and I'd listen to get to hear kind of, probably heard John Martin when he was like 16 years old, you know, and 1963. And all these folkies like the kind of, Incredible String Band and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
I had very early exposure to that, you know, before I could feed myself.
And so you grew up in Dundee?
Yeah.
And did you hang out were you musically connected to Michael Mara in any way?
Latterly, sort of later on, I played with Michael once or twice, you know, but I didn't really know that scene at the time because I moved to London when I was 20. So I didn't have much to do with these guys. It's quite funny. I'm just catching up now with the guy that I used to hate at the time because he was better than everybody else. He was Kevin Murray. You must know Kevin.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like, so I see a lot of Kevin now. He comes around every Friday for a jam, like, you know. But when I was younger, I used to hate the guy because he was the one to beat, you know. It's great.
Was he the top dog in Dundee?
He was the top dog in Dundee, Tom.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I know Kevin really well. In fact, I call him Uncle Kevin because he was at my brother's wedding, and for some reason that we were doing a family photo, and Kevin was in the photo, and he shouldn't have been there, so we just made him an uncle to explain. So now I actually think of him as an uncle, and he's
you should. He's very avuncular, you know. He's a lovely guy. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's kind of. I think Kevin will be absolutely chuffed to hear you say that. He's quite a modest fellow, and Michael Mara had quite a turn with the words. He was quite a fellow with the words.
Oh, he's a lovely lyricist, you know, just like, just such and a wise guy as well. You know, not wise, he's a wise guy, but he was a wise man as well. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what he wrote, you know.
Because my wife Gina was a lifelong massive Michael Mara fan. In fact, when we first started dating, she made me this cassette, the old mixtape thing. Yeah. And there was this beautiful Michael, don't let the ship blow over. And it was Kevin Murray production and lots of MIDI plucked strings and all that Kevin Murray sort of sound. And so as a result of that, I got Michael in to do this project in the Glasgow Jazz Festival, which had Martin Bennett in, because I was working with Martin quite a lot. And that's where they met and went on to do Grit together. And Michael was very interesting guy. But yeah, so you moved to London when you were 20. So what was that about?
Weirdly, it was to play jazz. I didn't start writing until about a year later, but I got a call from a guy called Ken Hyder, drummer. I don't know if you
Oh
know
yeah.
Ken.
Oh, I know Ken.
I played in Ken's band for about 7 or 8 years, but I mean that was the reason I moved down. As I met Ken through Rab actually in Dundee and we had a play, and he said, "What you plan to do with your life?" And I said, "Well, I'll make it out to London." I didn't mean it. And then a week later, he called me up and said, "There's a job going if you want it." And I said, "All right." So he called my bluff. So I felt I had to do it, you know. So yeah, packed my bag.
A job in his band.
Yeah, with Talisker.
Oh, Talisker, yeah. I think I saw. Well, I wonder, were you playing with him in Istanbul?
Yeah,
ever?
I was.
Oh my God!
I remember that well because I met Chet Baker in a lift. True.
As you do.
Yeah. And thought he looked familiar, and he looked like a sort of shrinky-dink version of Chet Baker, like, you know. Blagged my per diem off me. You know?
He did?
Oh, he did, yeah, because he was needing change for something. I don't know what it was anyway. So, but by the time I got to my floor, I had nothing for my dinner. So it was just, but, that was Chet Baker. True story, Istanbul.
Because I don't like Chet Baker because I saw the documentary about him and the look on his kids. I don't know if you've seen it, but his kids just look like broken, you know. And
yeah, I've written about Chet, and just like, and I don't think he was a good guy, but I think he's one of the most interesting examples about how people simplify themselves through addiction, so that he could be very blinkered in the way that he, approached his art, But I don't think it was good for anyone around him, and I personally lost out, to Chet. So
well, you did, but you don't have quite the same look as his kids. I mean, you've obviously
I'm still honored by the experience,
a lot of therapy and. So that would have been. I'm trying to work out. That would have been about something like 88. Would that fit?
Yeah. When was Chet dead? Must have been about 86, 87, maybe. Yeah. About then. Yeah.
Because I was on holiday in Turkey. And
did you see Paul Motion on that? He was on that festival. I remember.
No, I saw this guy Okay Temiz.
Okay Temiz, that's right.
The Turkish drummer was fantastic.
And then great guitar player called Erkan Ogur.
Were you not supporting Okay Temiz?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So I went to see that gig. It was a really big. It
was like Opera House or something. Yeah.
Really big venue, and I didn't actually know who Ken was, it was bizarre because being a jazz drummer growing up in Scotland,
I
just didn't know about him. And the first time I kind of saw him playing, I remember him doing this beautiful thing where he was kind of holding his cymbals and talking to the audience about how much he loved Turkish cymbals, and there was this what was the name of the sax player, tall guy?
Pete McPhail, alto player, very good alto player.
Yes.
Very angular kind of, sort of player, like brilliant player.
Yeah, and I got to meet Ken later at a Bath Jazz Festival and hang out with him and think he's an amazing guy. And there's a few guys like that I would love to have hung out, like gone to see when I was coming up and growing up, but they left Scotland. And,
he was down there quite early, but as you say, like a really charismatic kind of guy, and they brought a lot of people through that band. But I remember in that trip, he was obsessed with getting a Zildjian cymbal made, and we had to have this pilgrimage to the factory, like
right,
really scary, like So really dodgy part of town. There was the Zildjian factory in those days.
Did you have to go as well?
Yes, I had to go as well as part of my jazz education. He insisted it was a field trip, so we were all driving along.
So how old were you then at that point?
I would have been like 23.
I was about the same age. So how old are you now?
60.
Right. Okay. So we're about 2 or 3 years apart.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's the first time I saw you play then. That was before Amos. Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah.
And so did you go to like music college or anything like that? How did you actually learn jazz? Was it a self-taught thing or did you have people teaching you?
It was a self-taught thing, and when I was down in London, I was fortunate enough to hook up with a couple of folk that set me right on things, So, but it was pretty much self-taught from books and whatnot. But when I was in London, I had a couple of lessons from Derek Bailey,
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, wow.
it was because I was playing mostly free music then. So he put me right in a couple of things.
Somebody told me, in fact, we were talking about lessons with Derek Bailey. I was talking about, do you know George Burt?
Yeah, I know who you mean. Yeah.
He was saying that he knew someone that had lessons with Derek Bailey, and he just taught him conventional guitar technique, and it was quite a conventional lesson.
Yeah, I think if he was teaching you for money, sort of because he used to play Talk of the Town. He used to be a session player, and behind Morecambe and Wise. I mean, that was his sort of day gig, So he had all that stuff down. But I was there to see him as a free player, and just So he had so it was more of a conversation about how you take kind of anti-linear approaches to the guitar and don't play things that are just guitar-y. That fall easily into your fingers, and go widdly. He wasn't having any of that at all,
Was that like verbatim how it went? Don't not too guitar-y, no widdly.
I'm translating, but I mean that was the thrust of the conversation, yeah.
Wow. I mean, I always thought that he looked like when I saw him play quite a few times, and it was like he somehow he was looking at always like this is the first time he'd ever seen a guitar.
That's such a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And he just went, "What the hell does this do?" And then,
like, fuck!
Oh, that's amazing. and
you played it there.
And it's just got this freshness of that being in the moment with this sort of sense of possibility. And I always think about that when I play free, that how actually mentally that's quite a challenge to arrive at that moment with that sort of completely blank but positive freshness about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny the way he combined that sort of, as you say, like he just got the thing for his birthday, with a fairly kind of professorial approach as well, but oh god, and he did crazy things like he'd always have these pickups set to the bridge, because that way, which is like for a jazz player, it's a huge no-no. I mean, you get this really kind of sharp and kind of kind of angular and trebly sort of sound, but he did it so he could play all these harmonics, and so the whole thing was like a prism. He would split every note up into like 100 different constituents, and you could play any one of them. But at the same time, it was like you just got the thing. It was like, I wonder what this does, Well,
the theme music. I don't know if you've seen any of these interviews, but the theme music is Derek Bailey. So,
right.
If anybody's watching this and thinking who's Derek Bailey, you just heard it at the beginning. I know. Final thing to say is, have you got a sense of what you're going to play at Playtime in a couple of weeks? Have you thought about that? What you want to do?
Yeah, I've got some charts that I'd love to try, and because I'm thinking about trying to put something new together with Graeme in a rhythm section, Graeme Stephen, and so I've got some new tunes that I wouldn't mind trying out. And I've been trying to write a couple of things in a sort of parallel universe sort of standards sort of tradition, just like my conceit is I want to write things that were from one run 30s musicals that bombed, so and write some of the big numbers for those that were just kind of too weird to make the cut sort of thing, So I'll do a couple of those. So I've got one called "Are You Still Drinking That" I intend to play. So it's just...
So do you have to make sure that you don't write something that's too likely to be successful?
I don't think there's any chance of that. I've always managed that aspect of a career very well in the past, Tom.
Listen, man, it's been lovely talking to you.
You too, man.
Going for hours, but I'm really, really gutted to kind of be there on I'm doing this thing with these Vietnamese musicians that I met a couple of years ago in Vietnam, and they're coming over to do a project. So I'm up in the Highlands. So
oh, nice one. That's great. Well, next thing, Tom. Yeah.
But yeah, well, hopefully one of these days it will happen, and but everybody else will be there. Looking forward to seeing you, and thanks a lot for coming on and talking to me, and it's been really fun.
Pleasure, Tom. Look forward to the gig.
All right, man.
Okay.